Hey, how's it going, guys? So we're back with another Star Citizen video. If you're new channel, welcome. This is the fourth, and so far from what I see it, the final video of Complete History by the Astro Historian. So shout out and credit goes to the Astro Historian for the video. And this one is called Astro I read the name. Complete History of Star Citizen Lore number 4, Far Stars and Distant Planets. And I can't find one after this, so I guess this pretty much sums it up, and it just goes straight into other lore videos that he did, like talking about, for instance, I see one talking about the Drake Interplanetary, and another one talking about ships, another one talking about the Crusader Industries and all that. So I'm really looking forward to this one because I've been really enjoying his videos so far, the first 3, and I'm really happy I ran into his channel because he does a great job explaining things and also talking about the history, where things tie in, the origin of the companies, everything like that. So this one is 48 minutes long, so hope you guys got drinks, snacks, wherever you got to make it through this video. So without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
By the 25th and 26th century, humanity was at its colonial zenith. Exploration,
the height of European domination over the rest of the world,
was driving humanity further and faster into the darkness of space. This drive would send more people into the frontiers of space than even remained on our homeworld, resulting in a shift of not only perspective, but power itself. A new government for a new interstellar humanity. This is the most ambitious project I have ever attempted to make.
Yeah, dude, seeing his editing,
900 years.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, seeing his editing and everything like that, it's clear that he put a lot of time and effort into it.
Of in-game history, much of it fragmented or incomplete, into a single long narrative.
There it is.
Its purpose is to give better context to the events and universe of
Those are the other 3 videos that I saw. They're on the channel.
Online format, which is easier to follow. There will be addendums, short changes added to the series as it goes, simply because retcons and additions to lore are common for a game in development. Now let's return to the story with Chapter 4, Far Stars and Distant Planets. In 2460, RSI found itself with an issue. The population of Earth was on the rise once more, and it had heavily invested in commercial transports to bring colonists to the newly settled systems of humanity. They hired an advertising and PR group called Will It and Go Advertising to help.
Will It and Go. I never heard of them.
They came up with an ad campaign which would fundamentally change the perspective of becoming a colonist. The ad was called Breathe Free. Before this campaign, many people thought of colonization the same way the initial settlers of Mars did, pioneers tempting fate to push back the frontier. However, after RSI's Breathe Free campaign, the perspective shifted. No longer were you braving the frontier, but getting an opportunity. More space away from the crowded Earth. Becoming free of the constraints of Earth and becoming who you wanted to be. It was all a trip away. By the end of the 25th century, this ad had sparked the largest migrations of humans in history. People flooded out
was
to the
really
colonies
successful
to stake their claim in these far-flung worlds.
Breathe
and colonization fever had begun to grasp the average person like nothing had before. Aided by the discovery and exploration of planets like Virgil and Farron, humanity was truly becoming an interstellar species, with more people living off Earth than on it by the turn of the century. A key to this expansion was the discovery of the Killian system, likely from Davian in 2463. The system was enormous, housing 14 planets, of which 4 were viable for colonization. It was the largest and most lucrative system since the discovery of the Ellis system, and only 2 jumps away from Sol. This made it reachable to more potential colonists and a stepping stone to further colonization efforts outside of Sol itself. The primary focus of the system's colonization was on the 5th planet, which would become the heart of the system. Likely a naturally habitable or easily terraformable world, it would garner the attention of the military for its location close to Sol, and thus Earth, who would construct a naval base there called MacArthur, which would eventually become the name of the planet itself. Two of the other habitable worlds,
So it had a
Osha
military
and Keen,
interest.
were prime locations for settlement with their temperate climate. The last
Nice.
of the habitable worlds was the least hospitable, a hellish frozen world which sits barely outside the green zone. At the height of this movement, many new
There's always
terraformation
an
and
ice planet
colonization
in the
outfits
system.
were formed, including Turia Terraforming in 2471. They were founded on Azure in Farron, and their CEO, Adriana Bratnik, had a unique idea to generate interest in their new venture. She promised housing, supplies, and new land for the families of anyone who signed up to terraform new worlds for them, offering to build space stations to house the families while the work was being done. This would pay off massively, and may have been the reason why they acquired a lucrative new contract several years later. In 2473, a new system was discovered from the Bremen system, which granted scientists a unique look into a previously only distantly viewed star type. The system, which would become known as Tenga, consists of a
Tenga.
young white dwarf star, two planets,
Never heard of Tenga.
an asteroid belt. Astronomers speculate that before the star entered its red giant phase, one or more planets could have existed in the system between the asteroid belt and Tenga 1. When the star expanded in diameter, it likely destroyed any celestial bodies that orbited it too closely. The expanded habitable zone unfroze a small world on the former outer ring, and for several 100 million years made it habitable. Life began to emerge and was just reaching a primitive state when the star collapsed into a white dwarf, throwing the planet back into a deep freeze, then blasting the atmosphere away from the resulting planetary nebula, leaving evidence of its unique evolution on the now, once again, cold and dead world. In what was then known as the Hathor system, formerly UDS-2445-3-09, the Hathor group discovered a jump point in their private system, making it the third jump point discovered there. For a reason we have yet to discern, likely corporate greed, the Hathor group kept this new system a secret. This new system would remain known to only a few groups who were plying the system, but these groups were not associated with Hathor. They were smugglers, pirates, rebels, and outlaws. When Hathor took over the system,
To be honest, keeping systems a secret in a way is understandable, because if you discover the system, sure, your name may get plastered on and you may take the credit, but large corporations can swoop in and take over all the favorable systems like habitable or terraformable systems, and they can like make huge profits off of it. And just because your name is slapped on it doesn't really mean anything if you're not able to generate anything out of it. So that is so it does make sense why some people do keep like certain systems, like systems they discover a secret, because they don't want their like works stolen away, or they want to like, you know, make sure they can protect like their interests and rights of owning the system from like big corporations. So I can see where the corruption may swoop in, and where the distrust would also come in as well.
System, they cared very little to enforce UNE law, instead focusing on profit. As the military bastion of Cathcart slowly became abandoned, this allowed for more and more of those who lived outside the law to make their way into the lucrative system. As long as they didn't upset Hathor, they were mostly left alone. As a result, a new culture began to emerge, one hostile and antagonistic to the powers that be on distant Earth. Among this new culture, rumors began to circulate of a strange, sunless system, haunted by glowing ghosts. The system was so frightening that the Hathor group kept it a secret, even from the UNE, or so the stories claimed. There it remained, relegated to the realm of myth for almost 2 centuries.
Null system.
In 2481, a new system was found from the Farron system, known as Oritani. The system didn't have much in the way of terraformable land, with only the second planet, an ocean world with a
name
few
kind of
small
sounds
land
familiar
masses on it, being a suitable candidate. To the excitement of Turia terraforming, they were chosen to terraform the system, and went to work building the massive orbital space stations around the second planet. Due to the nature of these new projects, much of what is known after is sporadic and hard to verify, for reasons to be illuminated later. However, we know that Turia didn't just set their sights on the second world. They began building an underground complex on the first world, said to be a mesoplanet, and thus likely filled with valuable resources difficult to extract. The third planet was just outside the Green Band, but rumors swirled that Turia had managed to find something of incredible value under the water ice glaciers that covered most of the surface. The asteroid belt between the outer and inner system was found to be rich in nitrogen, and Turia had taken advantage of this and established numerous agricultural stations around the belt, using the construction of orbital stations to feed future colonists. In the outer system, the fourth planet was a gas giant with a thick and hydrogen and helium-rich atmosphere. The company had already built a harvesting station to help refuel ships coming in and out of the system and supply the terraformation process with raw resources. The fifth planet was the largest and oldest of the worlds, covered in ice and other materials, which the company had planned on exploiting through a series of harvesting stations. The last planet was dark red in color, due to the presence of hydrocarbon sludge formed from simple organic compounds long exposed to ultraviolet radiation. The world also had large quantities of methane ice visible around the impact craters on the surface. After the construction of the stations were complete, thousands of workers and their families flooded into the system to begin work. Over 2 long years, rumors began to trickle back to UNE space of food shortages and unrest about the lack of available land on the newly terraformed world for all who were promised it. Their dreams suddenly being reversed from new lands on virgin worlds to large platforms in the middle of a vast ocean. To quell these rumors, the CEO of the company invited reporters with her to the system to see for themselves what life was like in the stations. Many agreed to go, and on April 9th, 2485, they departed Ferron and entered the Oratani system. 2 days later, an incident occurred that would be the beginning of the end of the colonial expansion era. The Ferron-Oratani jump point collapsed. The loss of Oratani struck a jump point of the colonial expansion era. The Ferron-Oratani jump point collapsed.
A jump point collapsing? Wow. I mean, that is huge. Because, I mean, the access to losing just one access to a system is massive, both logistical and time and everything.
The loss of Oratani struck a heavy blow to humanity's psyche. The idea of easy, confident expansion across the stars was damaged. When news
How would the jump point collapse, by the way?
Loss, many didn't know such a thing was even possible. Jump points were known to be unstable, but not disappear completely. The UNE dispatched a massive fleet of scanning and scientific ships into Ferron, hoping to reopen the lost jump point or discover a new one. Humanity's best and brightest minds offered their help, and companies throughout the verse donated credits and supplies to the cause. The most brilliant minds in the UNE
Crusader Industries
grappled with a cosmic question. Can you open a collapsed jump point? Yet, all their efforts were in vain. As the frantic search settled into a systemic exploration of options, days turned to weeks, then to months, and though the story still sat on everyone's mind, the realization that the system might be gone for good slowly sank in. Eventually, the UNE reluctantly reduced the resources dedicated to rediscovering Oratani and installed an expensive array of sensor beacons near the former jump point. A fleet of military pathfinders was also deployed to the system and assigned to patrol the region on a regular basis. The fear that this would happen again kept settlers from venturing further into the stars, and systems began.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you find out that a jump point collapsed and everything, that could be terrible news. Say, for instance, you colonized or you moved to that system and realizing that you can never like make it back home to Earth or anything like that, that could cause like serious psychological damage and things like that. So that would like discourage people from like traveling, because if a jump point can disappear completely, hey, who knows?
To stockpile supplies to make sure that they could self-sustain should the unthinkable happen. The population was shaken by this development too. Systems with multiple jump points saw a noticeable increase in population, and there was an increased immigration back to Earth, the exact opposite of what the UNE had hoped to accomplish. This tragedy would forever be known for an altogether different reason. Yuri Ilyin was the lover of one of the colonists now trapped in Oratani, Corazon Tan. He would desperately search for a means to reunite with his lost lover and send daily comms to Corazon's parents to update them on his search. These messages grew more and more desperate until on February 11th, 2486, the last message was sent that was entirely unintelligible, except for the message, anything for Cora Amor. After that,
Cora Amor.
Yuri vanished without a trace. While no one knew the fate of Yuri Ilyin, a romance film was created in the late 25th century, named Cora Amor, a portmanteau of Yuri's final words, which popularized the tale. The film did some creative adjustment, with them having begun their romantic correspondence on February 11th, the same date as his disappearance, and the end explaining the garbled message as being from him finding an undiscovered jump point he used to finally reach his beloved Corazon. In the end of the film, his nav computer was damaged and lost the data, having them both be trapped on Oratani, but together. This turned the date of this tragedy into a popular holiday, celebrated on February 11th, and named after the film Cora Amor, where lovers exchange gifts and travel together to romantic destinations, while those without partners send out comms into space.
I think I've heard of that holiday once, and it's showing right now like everything is pink. I think that is what symbolizes that. So it's kind of like a Star Citizen Valentine's Day in a way, I guess you could say. But I just never knew that's how it began. So it began because of two people. One got lost forever, but however, his last transmission managed to make it through. And that got inspired to create a film, and it got so popular, it turned into a holiday. That is crazy.
Together to romantic destinations, while those without partners send out comms into space, like messages in a bottle, in hopes of attracting new love. The pink and black livery of Yuri's ship from the film became the colors of the holiday, which people still
what's going on with the video
to celebrate the occasion.
Keeps on flashing and all that.
By 2488, Solomon Hurston had grown old and tired, having ran Hurston Dynamics for 50 years. However, he stuck to his beliefs in keeping the family in the business, ensuring a tradition which continues to this day. While his son Darrington had been fired, he still had another inheritor to the company, Isaiah Hurston, 57 at the time. Thus began the tradition of each CEO of Hurston Dynamics choosing a successor to lead the company.
Hey, by the way, I just want to say, Astro Historian did a great job doing the character customization and matching it very closely to the figures in the portraits and pictures.
Only from the family that made up the leadership of Hurston Dynamics itself. By 2493, another system would be discovered, one which would turn out to be vitally important to the future of humanity, though no one would know it at the time due to its humble origins. Terrell D'Orazio was a student of Mentor University in the Rudder system. While there, he traveled to a section of space with his friend Idris to ingest hallucinogens and stare at the beautiful chromatic gas giant of Rudder 5. This was a popular pastime, as the planet was racked by storms which caused the chromatic gases to swirl and mix in beautiful patterns, thus a hotspot of tourists, passing pilots, and bored students looking to expand their mind. On this occasion, D'Orazio swore his sensors picked up an anomaly in the area, to which his friend assured him it was just the effects of the hallucinogens. Still, he never let go of the feeling that he was right, and after graduation, returned to the area in an exploration ship to slowly map the area, hoping to prove he wasn't just hallucinating all those years earlier. The novice explorer spent weeks scanning and charting the region to eventually be vindicated when he found a jump point. Either out of spite for dismissing him or thanks for his dismissive attitude towards his curiosity, D'Orazio would name the new system after his friend who had taken that trip with him so many years before, calling it the Idris system. The Idris system was quickly surveyed and mapped by the UNE Pathfinders, discovering an F-type main sequence star and 5 planets. The first planet resided so close to its parent star that it lacked atmosphere and even a crust, leaving the planet's solid iron core to solidify. The second planet has an atmosphere, but is inhospitable to human life. The planetside temperatures soar under the thick and volatile cloud cover with dangerously high atmospheric pressure. The third planet is an uninhabitable terrestrial ocean planet, mostly covered by an ocean of water mixed with ammonia and other volatile fluids. The fifth planet is a protoplanet, which, at the time, had a wealth of valuable minerals useful to the system's growth. The crown jewel of the system was the fourth planet, a mountainous world with uniquely acidic soil. It was a prime candidate for terraformation. While Idris 4 wasn't perfect, it was likely due to its own mountains being filled with abundant minerals, along with its sister planet, Idris 5, that resulted in the UNE marking the planet and system for terraformation and habitation. Little did they know that this action would set forth a series of events which still reverberate through time, as distant and covetous intelligences would soon seek to make this system their own. By the end of the 25th century, Pyrotechnic Amalgamated was coming off its peak of their rise to fame after revolutionizing mining methods for newly discovered systems. Their style of fitting mining vessels with Explorer-style scanners had become the standard method for exploiting newly discovered systems, and as such, their dominance using the novel method was on the decline. Industry insiders believed that the company would need a miracle to survive. In 2493, that miracle would come. CEO Cecile Uchiha attempted to save the company by ordering legacy flight records be reassessed to factor in recent advancements in jump point detection. The then decades-old flight data of the roustabout was unearthed and seemed to be the solution Uchiha had been hoping for. It didn't take long for the exploration ship dispatched by Pyrotechnic Amalgamated to discover the new jump point and take preliminary scans of the system. Insiders claim that CEO Uchiha screamed in celebration upon receiving the news of the discovery, and then screamed in frustration upon seeing that the system suffered from unpredictable solar flares. Still, significant mineral deposits on the second planet, Monox, and the presence of water and breathable atmosphere on Bloom convinced Uchiha to direct executives to devise a plan to assess and exploit the system. Pyrotechnic Amalgamated registered its discovery with the UNE and named the system in honor of both the company and the system's volatile star, Pyro. CEO Uchiha lobbied the UNE to claim the system, which would open the floodgates of government subsidies and resources to police and make living and traveling across it more manageable. Government officials elected to conduct a voluntary 10-year pilot program that would document the effects of the star's flares on humans. If the conclusion of the study was favorable, it would sanction colonization and officially claim the system.
Terminus.
Unfortunately for Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, the study was tricky to conduct, and other discoveries pulled attention away from Pyro, leaving the responsibilities of terraforming and protecting the system to anyone who wanted to do the work. One of those discoveries that drew the attention away from Pyro would become one of the most important systems in the history of unified humanity, and would lead to the crowning achievement of humanity's most ambitious exploration project. This system was the Magnus system. The first real success of Project Farstar, which was in full swing by this point.
Wait, Project Farstar, a United Empire of Earth funding initiative initiated to expand its borders outward from the Virgil system. Yeah, so it looks like the main focus of this video is more expansion, while last video was more of discovery of the systems and just like learning how to discover. This one is like, now we got the hang of it, so now let's start expanding. But either way, I mean, so far what I really like is the discovery of the Pyro system. I mean, like I've seen Pyro a few times throughout Star System videos, especially inside Star System, Star Citizen. But now to actually see how it was discovered and named, it was great. Let's continue.
Discovered in 2499, the initial surveys of the system showed it to be uncommonly empty of asteroid fields, protoplanets, or other potential hazards for space travel. Only one of its 3 planets was identified as a good candidate for terraformation. The system's then remote location and the abundance of natural resources found in the planet closest to the Sun attracted the attention of the military, who saw it as a potential location for a military shipyard, the first to be built outside of Sol. However, the military budget of the UNE, though more sizable after the discovery of the Banu, was still too small for such an ambitious idea. Nevertheless, this took eyes away from Pyro, which was now entirely left in the hands of the company that had claimed it. Pyrotechnic Amalgamated immediately established operations in the Pyro system's most substantial mining deposits, and bolstered its security force to strongly discourage others from developing their own. While most mining sites were on Pyro 2, today known as Monox, the company built a majority of the staging sites, processing centers, and habitation encampments on the more hospitable Pyro 3, today known as Bloom. Still, the looming threat of solar flares made Pyrotechnic Amalgamated reluctant to establish a permanent headquarters on either planet, forcing the company to adopt a radical and expensive alternative. Construction began on McEwen Station in 2506, named in honor of the roustabout watch officer who noticed the gravitational anomaly. The station was designed to be a massive and awe-inspiring operational hub for the company. Yet it wasn't long before this ambition clashed with reality. Construction cost overruns, disappointing mining profits from Pyro 2, and a downturn within the wider mining industry combined to drag down the company's bottom line. In late 2508, CEO Uchiha slowed construction of the station due to liquidity issues and seriously considered abandoning it. In 2510, a Pyrotechnic Amalgamated security force hunting an outlaw crew ran deep space scans that returned an unusual result. The company dispatched an exploration ship that discovered a jump into a new system. Scans showed this new system anchored by a red giant and had a promising asteroid belt, but no habitable planets. Financially strained, Pyrotechnic Amalgamated decided to not pursue interest in the system. They registered it with the UNE under the name Nivellen and used the finder's fee to fill the budget shortfall in constructing McEwen Station. Nivellen was also not very favorable to the UNE, whose priority was habitable or terraformable worlds. Since the system was entirely made of 2 gas giants and an ice giant, it was passed on by the UNE officials at the time, not knowing that this seemingly worthless system would soon be part of the bulwark of humanity. By the early 26th century, Angeli in the Croshaw system was solidifying as a political 26th century. Angeli in the Croshaw.
I remember this this image. I think it was from the 890 Jump yacht ship commercial. But either way, when I saw this location, I was like, wow, this is definitely only somewhere a rich person can go. But either way, this is really great. I really wish that I can go to a place like this one day.
System was solidifying as a political hub of this new interstellar humanity through entertainment and news. Upsana Dixit was a journalist, news anchor, and showrunner living on Angeli when she came up with an idea for a debate show where 2 opposing viewpoints would go head-to-head against one another and broadcast it as an audio program.
Community call.
The show became known as Showdown and began broadcasting in 2511. Becoming a quiet success, growing steadily over time. Within 10 years, CATV bought the rights of the show and began to broadcast it on Spectrum. Around this same time,
Nice.
Avian, the home of the first contact with the Banu, was still having steady business and contact with the gregarious species who arrived to engage in trade with their new neighbors. The Glow Festival had become a Davian tradition, called Luminalia.
Wait, Luminalia? Wait, so there's looks like colorful crates coming out of that vehicle. So I'm guessing that's supposed to be presents and there's lights. So I guess this may be a Christmas theme. And looks like quad crap, I forgot what those vehicles call. Quad speeders or whatever. I can see strings attached to them, so I guess they're trying to like pose as reindeers and they're pulling that vehicle like Santa's sleigh. That's cool.
By local news outlets, celebrated every December at a night market, presumably in the burgeoning city of Jata on the planet of Cestulus, which had recently been terraformed. This tradition would soon begin to spread as merchants began to take it with them after traveling to the newly habitable world to sell their wares. None knew that this tradition would soon become a staple of the end-of-the-year festivities for all of humanity. Construction on McEwen Station in Pyra was completed in 2512. It streamlined mining and supply operations for the company's operations within the system, and provided an additional revenue stream from the sale of fuel, food, and other supplies to independent miners traveling to and from Nivellen. It was in Nivellen in 2514 that one of those ships, a merchant marine ship under the command of Adhama Skaus, discovered what
Damn,
would
look at that
become known
mustache.
as the Keel system.
Keel
named
system.
after a friend of the captain's whom he wanted to motivate to join him in exploring the stars. Keel is another massive system, though unlike other large systems,
Yeah, it
like
looks pretty
Ellis,
big.
most of Keel's worlds were uninhabitable. With a mesoplanet,
Of course.
Keel 1, an airless world, Keel 2,
Airless?
a subgiant gas world, Keel 4, a ringed gas giant, Keel 5, and a tiny protoplanet on the edge of the system, Keel 6. The only candidate for terraformation would be the third planet from the star, which would come to be known as Severus. At the
Severus
same
Snape.
time, the third CEO of Crusader Dynamics, Ariel Hurston, began to lay the foundations of the company's infamous reputation for
Man, look at those
poor labor
sideburns.
conditions. He created what would become known as the Life Labor Style Employee Contract. This locked in workers at Hurston facilities into lifetime contracts, which they could effectively never quit. It gave them everything from housing, medical
Damn.
support, and other social services in exchange for the employee losing their ability to control their autonomy.
Bro, that is. What kind of. Hey, do you guys really think that's a fair deal? So basically, I sign my life away. In return, you give me housing, medical care, and all that. And on top of that, I have to work until death. Nah, man, dude. You know what? I'll work hard and buy my own house and all that. But nah, screw that. I am not signing that contract.
Many labor activist groups, even at the time, protested this move, calling it legal slavery and predatory, as
That actually
Hurston
makes sense.
actively sought out ex-convicts and the poorest and most destitute of humanity and prey on their desperation when offering them a job and services in exchange for never being able to leave the company. The Hurstons defended these contracts as giving a second chance.
So basically, if ex-cons like sign that form, basically they just got out of prison. If they sign that form, basically they just got back into prison, in a manner of speaking, with a brand new life sentence.
To people whom society had abandoned. No matter what side you're on in this matter, it proved to be exceptionally successful in bolstering the workforce of Hurston Dynamics, whose terrible reputation for safety and health had driven away many other workers. A year later, in 2515, a tramp freighter named the Mary Crow was traveling through the Hathor system and trying to keep a low profile as they ferried illegal goods through the system. Their sensors picked up a gravitational anomaly, which was reminiscent of a jump point. Because they were trying to stay out of the eyes of local authorities, this discovery would remain a secret. But one of its members, navigator Jake Taps, kept the data for safekeeping. Little did he realize at the time that what he had was a discovery of monumental proportions, one that would lead to a mystery which remains unsolved to this very day. By the early 26th century,
Okay.
Project Farstar was beginning to gain speed, and its magnum opus came at the hands of one of the most famous explorers of humanity, Huiyin Song. In 2516, Song discovered a new system, which was at the time
That sounds
known
like a
as
Korean name.
42A. Him and his crew were astonished by their discovery, as this system not only had 4 planets and an almost identical star to Sol
I think it may
itself,
be.
but the third and fourth planets were super-Earths, with the third being
Super
a
Earths.
natural Earth-like planet, covered in thriving extraterrestrial life. It was the
Oh, he
first
lucked out.
naturally Earth-like planet discovered with native flora and fauna on it. It would become what many would
Is it
believe,
Terra?
even to this day, in the 30th century, to be the future of the human race. As such, the star would be named Terra Nova, or New Earth in Latin,
Terra
often
Nova.
shortened to just Terra.
Okay.
This discovery was immediately impactful, with no more than 7 colony ships setting out for Terra to make
Bro, look at all those jump points. So let's see. Terra to Pyro, Terra to Tyrannus, Terra to Gauss, Terra to Tyak, Terra to Stanton, Terra to Hadrian, Terra to Magnus. So basically, this is like the crossroads in a way.
the third planet their home in the first 2 years. The discovery of Terra also led to new discoveries in jump point formation, as it was discovered that while the star was an almost carbon copy of Sol, unlike Sol, its outer planetary system never formed. Without the mass diffusion caused by the gas giants, and with the star's location in the center of a dense stellar cluster, extremely stable jump points arose easily. Thus, it was discovered that Terra was a nexus of jump points to other, very stable systems. The first planet in this system was known as Arrow. It's a mesoplanet and is filled with valuable resources, but due to its closeness to the star, it is nearly impossible for large-scale operations to set up there. It also has 2 tiny moons which orbit it, Petrum, a small, captured Carboniferous asteroid, and Petrus, a lumpy, irregularly shaped moon with an inclined orbit. The second planet in the system, known as Pike, is a different story. It's an airless world with its own moon, Toja, which is tidally locked with the far side of this moon, featuring
Toja.
heavy scarring from frequent impacts. It is also one of the most densely resource-packed planets in the universe. It is covered in deposits of platinum, mercury, iron, gold, and more.
Wow.
While still difficult to live on for any extended period, it is much more accessible, leading
Yeah,
to
but it's a
unique
resource
robotic
jackpot.
solution to extracting and delivering resources to help fund the colonization of the system. The jewel of the system, the third planet, known simply as Terra, is Earth's larger sibling when it comes to worlds. Its naturally oxygen-based atmosphere, indigenous vegetation, vast oceans, and temperate climates made it a paradise planet for many who were looking for a new home among the stars. The
Okay.
only downside came from its solitary moon of Ida, which is roughly the same size as Earth's moon Luna. Ida causes much more severe tidal forces than those found on Earth. Additionally, deep in the southern region, there are
Wait.
tidal forces than those found on Earth.
Okay, so just don't live close to the shoreline. But either way, so I mean, so far throughout this entire video and also parts of the last video, they were having a hard time, like a jump point collapsing and just finding planets that were uninhabitable. I mean, they caught a lucky break with Terra. I mean, besides the fact that there are like more rough tidal waves, but besides that, it sounds great. It's habitable, it's very similar to Earth and all that, so that's really great. I mean, just there's gonna be like trial and errors along the way, but as long as you push through and keep up the hard work, something will come out of it.
Additionally, deep in the southern region, which would become known as Kazi, the scout team discovered remnants of an artificially constructed rock formation. Nothing remained of evidence of this species that once built
Kazi.
this rock formation. This lost civilization would soon become nicknamed the Atlanteans by future residents, and as colonies began to form
Never
on
heard
the
of them.
planet, more and more evidence of this long-lost civilization began to emerge, including vast empty stone ruins scattered all over the world. Terra would fundamentally change humanity as we know it, thanks to the abundance of natural species of flora and fauna which inhabited it. These creatures and planets would be added to the libraries of seed plants and animals to be used to terraform new worlds. The most famous of this is arguably the creature that would replace much of Earth's livestock on worlds outside of the Sol system, the Kazi Grazer. This warm-blooded creature lives in herds and uses...
I remember this creature. It was a hilarious Inside Star Citizen video. They kept on calling it the space cow, and there was like different forms of it. One was a lot hairier, but those one live like in colder climates and all that. And they can charge at you. But however, one of the features that like really disgusted a lot of people were, I don't know if you can see it, but right there at the stomach, the eggs are like, you know, hanging out and all that. But either way, space cows. That's how I remember them. And Jared and the team had a great time with that video. They were just making fun of each other, and it was funny. If you guys haven't seen that video, go check it out on my channel. And if you don't want to see me in it, just go check it out on the Star Citizen channel.
Uses eggs to reproduce that it carries and clutches on its underside of its belly. It also lives in the cold southern Kazi region of Terra, meaning it can survive in cold conditions that Earth livestock would struggle to live in or be entirely unable to survive in, likely requiring less specific foods than other similar livestock. As a result, its eggs are not only edible but also its meat, and its thick hide is perfect for making warm and water-resistant clothing out of. This makes the creature ideal for early settlers on any planet, giving them a source of protein and clothing. As such, the grazer quickly became a staple food for much of humanity. The last planet in the system is known as Gen, and initially was entirely overshadowed by Terra, as it required terraformation to be inhabitable, and was on the edge of the green band, making it colder and less inviting than its neighbor, despite being a super-Earth terraformation candidate. It languished for years in the shadow of Terra.
So close to Terra, but just less inviting.
Required to turn it into a habitable world. In 2522, another system was discovered, this time by accident from the Keel system. It was a binary star system, which would become known as Baker.
Baker
system. At the time, binary stars were not considered viable candidates for terraformable worlds, and Baker was no exception. With 3 of its 4 worlds having some of the most extreme environments humanity had ever seen. Baker 1 is actually being slowly dragged into one of the stars, and as a result is extremely hot.
Damn.
Baker 2 is a smog world.
Oh, wait, is it?
And as
looks like it's twin suns, like 2 different stars. Dude, no wonder it's so hot.
The result is extremely hot. Baker 2 is a smog world with an atmosphere so toxic and corrosive that it is able to dissolve even modern spaceship hulls very rapidly. Baker 3 is an ice giant that is slowly growing in size despite supposedly shedding bits of itself as large crystalline space icebergs that make flight in the vicinity of the planet a nightmare of navigation. The last world, Baker 4, is simply a mostly featureless, airless rock filled with mineral deposits. By the 2520s, it was becoming clear that humanity was no longer simply surviving out of the bounds of our home system, but thriving. Jump point relays built by Asiato ComRelay were making jump travel easier and thus sending humans farther and farther every year. New universities like Astrovan University on Cestulus were being founded. Around this time,
that's a cool image.
Now famous Radagast Bar was built
Radagast
in
Bar.
Portulatus, Mars, which by this point was 400 years old. This was the peak of the colonial expansion era. It is estimated that 70% of the entire human race were living off of Earth in 12 different star systems.
Damn, that's a lot.
All with their own unique cultures, opinions, and needs. Despite the cultural and demographic changes to the UNE, the seat of power and the distribution of representation was still firmly located and focused on Earth and its needs over the needs of the colonies. What had begun with the questioning the competency of the UNE due to the debacle on Farron had started to evolve and expand into a wider political movement. The citizens of the stars were increasingly demanding more and more protection from rising outlaw violence, more support for space exploration, and more representation with their governing body. The UNE wasn't designed to deal with these realities of modern space colonization, and the bloated bureaucracy and at times blatant corruption were becoming clear for all to see. The people wanted a change, and surprisingly,
Whoa, what's with the video?
UNE agreed. Thus
Keeps on flashing
started
a
the
little bit.
painful transformation of the United Nations of Earth
The
into
UNE.
the United Planets of
UPE?
Earth. In 2523, the UPE
Oh, it
was
is called
founded
UPE.
with a new, unique structure. Congress remained, restructured to allow more representation for the new systems.
So instead of
Now
nations,
each
it's now
planet would receive a
planets.
certain number of representatives instead of nation or state, with Earth likely being the exception, gaining more representatives than any other planet. In addition to the reorganized Congress, a new leadership position was created called the Tribunal. This replaced the
Tribunal.
old Council of the UNE, which served as the executive office of the government, and narrowed down the members to 3 different offices. The High Secretary, who was the technical head of Congress and responsible for managing the bureaucracy, the High Advocate, who was responsible for the law enforcement, and High General, who was responsible for the military. This was seen as streamlining the responsibilities of the old council, spreading out these
I wanna be High
executive roles
General.
while still giving each one enough power to deal with the issues that might arise quickly. While it isn't clear, it can be assumed that both the Congress and Tribunal were elected positions, with even the High General being a political position as much as a military one. However, it may also be that Congress were the ones to appoint the Tribunal through their own vote and not the public. The citizenship system, which had been adopted by the UNE, remained in its entirety, which granted special rights to those who did a great service to the government, be it civil or military service or some other great deed. One of these rights was voting in UPE elections, effectively creating a separate ruling class over the vast majority of humanity, while still being technically relatively attainable by any who served in the government. It was the consolidation of power into the tribunal, combined with the continuance of the citizenship system, that had some worried that this was not a move to include more people in the government, but to consolidate power into an eventual
That was really cool.
dictatorship.
How it was presented, like the drawing and
Additionally, with the
painting.
creation of the UPE, the advocacy was created to see to the safety concerns of the average person living in the UPE. The advocacy is humanity's inner system police force, with everything from bureaucrats and security officers to elite agents and spies who work to protect the government from internal and external threats, while enforcing the laws of this new government. The creation of the advocacy would free up the military to become more proactive instead of reactive with security, able to patrol wider areas and focus on the often lawless frontier rather than stay grouped up in large fleets around the core systems. It was also the catalyst for a new wave of upgraded systems. The first was the RSI Perseus gunboat,
Oh yeah.
built in the late 20.
I mean, I didn't see like a architect reviews video of this or anything like that, but I have seen the ship about like maybe 2 or 3 times in other videos. And some of you guys did say like the ship may be small, but it packs like quite a punch or something like that. And I forgot what the other details were, but I might have to just dive deeper into it. But that is like the one thing I do remember you guys mentioning about this ship.
520s, this ship was designed mainly as a patrol and enforcement ship. Being dubbed the Subcap Slayer,
Subcap
its twin
Slayer?
double-size 7 turrets were designed to overwhelm any ship in its size and below. However, its main feature was not its weaponry, but its shape language. It was designed to look intimidating and mimic larger capital ship designs, thus causing unsuspecting opponents to believe they were fighting a much more fearsome opponent than it was.
Oh,
Additionally,
okay.
the new
So kinda
government
like
attempted
deception.
to get control of the chaotic economic situation of planets of humanity. Until then, every system, and sometimes every planet, used their own unique currency. Due to the hands-off approach the UNE had with a lot of colonization efforts, this was never attempted to be rectified. When the UPE introduced its first currency, cash transaction records or CTRs, they found that their own currency was often competing with several other nearly successful currencies. In 2528, High Secretary Livia Fenner assembled a commission of economists, financial consultants, and other officials to explore possible solutions. This commission spent the next few months testing the economic feasibility of a government that supports multiple currencies. They ultimately decided that the entire currency system required a complete overhaul. Local governments would have to be forbidden from minting their own methods of exchange, so that the UPE could bring all the various planets under one consistent and unified form of currency. It was in these meetings that the United Earth Credit was born. After the announcement of this unified currency, the first course of action was to create an entity that would act as the hub for handling this new currency. The UPE
they gotta
brought
control
in
it economically
experts from various financial markets to ultimately form the Central Core Bank, to create and administer the monetary policy, to conduct foreign exchange operations, and monitor the banking sector. Most importantly, the Central Core Bank would maintain reserves to provide a financial backing that could honor the credit attached to the UEC. Around this time, a consummate nav jumper and teenage runaway, Marie Santi, registered her find of a new system from the Keel system. It had 3 planets, a perpetually stormy tidal-locked first planet with a narrow habitable band along the Terminator line, a second planet consisting of a massive desert, and a rare super Jupiter gas giant. It was named Horus after Santi's ship and would become the obsession of her life. By 2529, a new program to enforce the UEC adoption around human space was going poorly. Many feared their planets would become disadvantaged at best, and at worst would cause an economic collapse if they were forced to accept the new currency. As a result, protests, often violent, erupted throughout the UPE.
Of course.
None of these were more severe than in Jata on the Cestulus system. The system was experiencing a healthy growth from being one of the few places human and Banu could trade, and it seems many feared that if they were forced to use the new UEC,
most populous city of
that
Celestius,
might end that relationship with the Banu and spell doom for the system. Intense protests were happening all over the city to use the new UEC. That might end that relationship with the Banu and spell doom for the system.
Okay, so it looks like trade and relationship with the Banu is very crucial here. So I get so it looks like the rioting and all that led because of an economical reason of ending one relationship with an alien race. But I mean, it's been seen in history that every time like a market crash or like a financial or economic hardship comes, there's always going to be people protesting and rioting. So I'm not that surprised, but let's see how violent it got.
Intense protests were happening all over the city when one fateful day at the headquarters of the local SSN/CATV Spectrum broadcast company, a panicked security officer began shooting into the protesters. In response, the protests became a riot and began to rip the city apart. Over the course of 2 weeks, hundreds of people were injured and several died. The local government was unable to control the riots, and the UPE was forced to call in the 12th Expeditionary Unit of the UPE Army to put down the riots.
Wow, they brought in the military for this.
Many of these soldiers were injured during the suppression of these riots, and at least 2 were killed. The final move that quelled the out-of-control populace was the arrival of a single RSI Perseus to the city. The sight of this brand new ship looming over them terrified the citizens into thinking the UPE might begin bombarding the city in attempts to stop the chaos. As a result, the rioters surrendered out of fear, and what was called the Siege of Jata at the time, and eventually known as the Unified Currency Riots, had ended. However, this did slow the process of the
it almost turned into a civil war.
Currency. That same year, the first real milestone for the new government was reached. Pharaon had become increasingly important to the economy of the UPE, and as such, there was a call to officially integrate the system into the wider government. Thus, in 2529, the UPE officially extended the offer of representation to Asura, Pharaon III, in Congress. The offer was accepted, and the first new system was incorporated legally into the growing unified government. Unfortunately, it would also become the high-water mark for the golden age of expansion, as a year later, nav jumper Catherine Segovia discovered a new jump point from the Baker system. The new system had 5 planets, including a great candidate for terraformation with the 3rd planet. Instead of turning the data into the UPE, she contacted Gaia Planet Services, made famous for their work terraforming the Ellis system, and sold the data to them directly for a higher payout.
Makes
GPS
sense.
didn't even bother turning in this information to the UPE, instead greedily pushing into the system to get their first claim on the potentially terraformable 3rd planet. They worried that if they waited for approval, other squatters would arrive and lay claim to the world before them. As CEO Joseph Jules Jr. said, "We'd rather pay the fine than waste the time." As the team arrived on the world and began to set up their equipment, a mysterious group of unknown ships and creatures surrounded them and took them hostage. This was an advanced species which humanity never encountered before, so there was no way to communicate with them. However, as a sign of good faith, a single worker was allowed to return to human space, a foreman named Charles Baxter, a move that baffled the workers who had been captured. Mr. Baxter first returned to his employers to notify them of all 276 employees that were being held hostage.
That's a lot of hostages.
Supposedly, the CEO, Jules Jr., argued that they should try and cut a deal with this new species themselves as a means to undercut the nightmare scenario they found themselves in. This was a pipe dream, however, as the company did not have the resources to even decipher the language of the species, let alone negotiate. Reluctantly, the company executives contacted the UPE and let them know of the situation.
Oh, man.
As a result, Baxter
So much
was
for a
pulled
higher
into
profit.
a hearing of the tribunal, where he admitted that the company had not even bothered to scan the world before beginning their terraformation operations. While this incident would mark a drastic change in UPE policy for future exploration and terraformation, the immediate concern were the members of the terraforming crew who remained hostages of this new, possibly hostile race. The UPE knew they were in a terrible position to negotiate with this new species, and had made an even worse first impression, which would make any attempt to get the hostages back difficult. Maybe as a compromise, a dual response was thought up. Initially, the UPE fleet mustered in force for the first time since the Unification Wars.
About to go to
arrived
war
at
with
system
the
as a
aliens.
show of force, but remained at the entrance to the jump point. However, once humanity rattled its saber, diplomatic envoys arrived to open negotiation with the species. It took 15 days, but eventually each side was able to translate each other's language. We learned these aliens called themselves the Jean.
Sean.
Followed was 57 days of negotiation.
Damn,
which
that's
would
a long
fundamentally
time.
Changed the direction of humanity. It marked the end of the Golden Age and the beginning of the slow descent into war and dictatorship. Thank you for watching this episode of this long-running series. This takes an awful amount of research and time to complete, so if you're enjoying these, remember to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and turn on notifications to know when these are released.
Oh, he's got merch.
And if you really want to help out, think about tossing us a few credits by becoming a member. I'd also like to thank the patrons on screen now for their continued support. If you want to join them for as little as $5 a month, you can support future episodes to get early access to these videos and all of my other videos. I'd also like to thank the editor for this episode, Uri, who, without their help, this would not be possible. I'd also like to shout out the artists who work on the music for these videos, New Soul, who have been making Star Citizen fan music for years. Be sure to check out both their sites linked in the description.
All right.
Thank you again for watching. Remember to comment down below with questions or comments, and, like I say every time, Ex Historia ad astra.
Okay, so that was actually a really good video. I mean, the end there, the end part right there where she called in Gaia, so that way they can turn a huge profit for discovering the system, all that. She could have been very successful if it wasn't for an alien. Got taken hostage and eventually had to call in the military. But I say for me personally, the highlight of this video was the discovery and explanation of the Pyro system, because that is one of the systems that I've seen many times in Star Citizen, as I mentioned before. But looks like, judging by the timeline, we are now currently in in-game present day. So that would explain why this would be the last video. So the next time you guys see me when I watch Astro Historian, it'll be more for another video, because another maybe Star Citizen lore video, like maybe taking a look into several of the companies or maybe species, who knows. So I'll just take a look around and see what I can find. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's an hour long, but if you guys watched all the way from the beginning to the end, you guys are a real one. So thank you so much for that. And also, thank you so much, and thank you for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. And like you said, if you want to support the channel, come become a member. Right now, I'm like 8 weeks ahead of schedule right now. I have like literally a video almost every single day for the next 8 weeks. So if you guys want early access, make sure to become a member. I promise you won't regret it. So thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. Without anything else, I'll see you guys next time.